Hey there, it's Andrea, and welcome to the Voice of Influence podcast. Today I have with me Elisa Schmitz. She is an award winning entrepreneur and professional journalist. She's the Latina founder and CEO of 30seconds.com, an inspiring digital media platform that makes the world a happier, healthier, and more delicious place. 30 seconds at a time. She is also the founder of iParenting, a best of the web digital media company that was acquired by the Walt Disney Company. After the sale, Elisa worked for Disney as a director and executive editor of the Disney Interactive Media Group. She has been a newspaper columnist, magazine editor, radio and video host, and creator of content and marketing programs for various Fortune 500 companies. She is also the author of the book, Become the Fire, Transform Life's Chaos into Business and Personal Success. Welcome to the podcast, Lisa.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. It's great to be here, Andrea.
So so many questions that I have for you. We're going to dig in a little bit today, but I want to start just with the question when it comes to your book. What do you mean by Become the Fire?
Yes, it's a great question because it's really counterintuitive, right? Because fire is hot, fire seems dangerous and destructive and all those things. And the reason why it's called Become the Fire is because of all of those things I just said. Like normally we think of fire as being, a bad thing, when in fact going through chaos and fire, as I describe it in the book, is actually the thing that makes you stronger, wiser, less afraid, more courageous, and more willing to, go after your goals. Because after you've been through the fire, you come out stronger, and you can then use the strength that you've gained to, fuel your success. So as I talk about in the book, it's either you can let the fire burn you or you can let the fire forge you. And so becoming the fire is all about letting that fire forge you and then letting it propel your success.
I love that. The idea of the fire forging you, like going through the fire, being able to, that it doesn't just consume you. I think,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's about, seeing all of that chaos and sort of the challenges that we go through, as flames. And instead of those flames, burning you alive, which can really feel like they do, and when you're in the moment of it, instead, those flames are lessons. They are, sort of hard-won wisdom that can inform the next steps you take in your journey, because you're that much more wise and that much stronger and more courageous.
Towards like at the very beginning of your book, you talk about how your company was acquired by Disney. Just that it was a significant event for you. What obviously would be significant to have an acquired company, period, but why in particular? Because it was Disney. Like, why did that matter to you?
Yeah. I think, it was such an interesting journey because, and I tell the story about how Disney transformed my life when I was a child, sort of feeling like I was always on the outside and, being bullied in school and wanting to sort of fit in all the time. And going to Disney, my family, we took a train ride, from Chicago to Orlando that took forever. And I describe how it felt to actually, finally be standing in front of the gates of the happiest place on earth and feeling that overwhelming magic. And to me, how that magic was so real, and it just inspired me in ways that, I probably can't even understand to this day, but it really inspired and motivated me to be in that very special place. And so to come full circle and create a business that was, thought of so highly that it was acquired by this magical company that I loved my whole life was truly, I don't want to be cliche, but it was a dream come true. But it wasn't a dream that I had, meaning that I didn't set out to build a business that was going to be acquired by Disney. It wasn't, planned. It wasn't sort of a dream that I set out to fulfill. But yet, when it sort of happened that way, it was just a really fascinating full circle moment for me that was extremely powerful and meaningful. And then to work for Disney was, again, just, an extremely amazing opportunity. And to, go from being a fast moving entrepreneur to working at one of the, biggest media companies in the world, and you're learning how things slow down a lot, and you have to learn the new way of doing things, very corporate. It's not very entrepreneurial in that sense of being able to just, move fast and pivot, and, all that stuff that you do as an entrepreneur. So it was, a very, very important part of my, sort of wisdom and education as a professional, in my career. So it was all around awesome. Okay.
So based on what you were just telling me, I'm curious, like what was it for you that really shifted when your company got acquired by your dream company, it became a dream come true? What do you think shifted inside of you?
I'm not sure that there was a big shift as much as there was this sense of completion in a way, because I had been working, it was a journey to build this company. I built it from a personal need. In my own life, it was during my first pregnancy, and I, saw this need for pregnancy information. And so, kind of that's the start of the business that then became iParenting, that, became one of the, most highly regarded parenting sites out there. And so, working at that for, about a decade plus, and then to just have so much interest in the business. It wasn't, just from Disney, but Disney was the one that we ended up, selling the company to. It was extremely gratifying. It was extremely, amazing. I mean, just one of those moments. Again, you don't necessarily set out to do something like that, but then when it happens, at least in my case, I know nowadays entrepreneurs do set out to do exactly that, intentionally, but back then I did not. And so it was just a sort of, it felt like completion, like, okay, I've taken this business as far as I can, and now to, sort of park it, if you will, into a bigger entity, and then let it sort of become part of that. I called it the Disney mothership, it became part of the mothership. It was just like, wow, that's awesome. It's great. I was part of the transition that helped sort of integrate it into the Disney Family Network. And kind of got to sort of launch a couple of the sites and do a lot of really cool things that, I couldn't have done without the, sort of mothership structure in place. So I just felt like the next step in the journey, not only for myself, but for the business itself. And so, it was just, and it was a really interesting time to do it, because, we started the business sort of before the dot-com boom, then it survived the dot-com boom, survived the dot-com bust, all of those things that sent many companies, tumbling in the other direction. But it was, really a validation of all of the hard work and the struggles and the roller coaster and all of that, blood, sweat, and tears that went into building that business. And so, I feel nothing but, just enormous, appreciation and just this like satisfaction in the journey and how it ended, and then sort of moving on from there and, becoming a serial entrepreneur. It just all has been my path, my journey that has been really, ups and downs, like I said, highs and lows and all of that. So it's not been easy. I don't ever want to paint this picture that it was an easy thing, or that it, just dreamy or whatever. I mean, it was a lot of hard work that culminated in that, and then a lot of hard work after that. So, but when you love what you do, which I do, I'm completely passionate about my work. It doesn't feel like work. It just feels like, this is what I do. This is my, sort of mission and purpose in life.
So just to wrap up the little conversation about your experience with Disney, I'm also curious, because our listeners are oftentimes in bigger companies. I'm wondering if you took away any particular lessons learned about leadership and how to lead in a bigger company, or what kind of skills or influence is necessary in that kind of scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, I think It was definitely culture shock, right? Again, going from a smaller company where I sort of had to, wear so many hats, to then moving into a bigger structure and then having my very defined role and trying to figure out exactly what you said, which is to first of all navigate that new landscape and find out who are all the stakeholders and how do what are the touch points that I have to do before I can get anything sort of move forward within the organization, and how do I sort of garner the sort of respect and collaboration with my colleagues. And I was doing this sort of both from Chicago and from LA, going back and forth. So it was a lot going on. And I think that the best advice or the best sort of tip I can give is to be extremely situationally aware. And what I mean by that is to, always kind of know what's going on around you, read the room. That's, hands down, like the biggest tip I can give when working in a big organization is learning to read the room. And that means, watching people's body language, not just what they're saying with their words, but what they're saying with their body language. And are they watching the clock? Are they checking their watch? Are they taking notes, things like that, that will inform you as to what people are thinking about you, about what you're presenting, about what you're offering, and then following up accordingly, and always sort of looking to collaborate without sort of elbowing your way through things. I think that was a big part of my success was again, learning who the stakeholders are and making relationships with those people. And, I've been very strong, I think, in building my network, intentionally wanting to have good relationships with people and companies, because you just never know how those will, help you and how you can help others. You want to be a benefit to your colleagues and to your bosses, the people who are both, sort of side by side and also above you and beneath, you kind of the lower rung, whatever you want to call it, and on the ladder. I think every step on the ladder is so important to have maintained good relationships with. And so that's probably my number one takeaway from that experience.
Those are really good. And in fact, situational awareness is what I wanted to talk about next. Would you mind sharing a time when your situational awareness, your ability to read the room faster, more accurately than others, was actually a benefit or an edge that you had?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So for me, that whole concept of becoming situationally aware, I didn't really know it in those terms when I was a child, but I looking back on it, I can see times when early on it served me really well. And then, it specifically, I was in Beirut, Lebanon. We lived there when I was very young. And so being in this environment where it was just before the Civil War, extremely volatile situation. There was gunfire. There were sort of, blown out cars and things like that you would, see as you're walking down the street. It was very, very disturbing, but it was also extremely important in my life for helping me develop the situational awareness and understanding where the threats were, and, sort of that connection to my senses. And, I mentioned like listening and, listening to people, but also watching and seeing, using your senses to inform yourself about what's happening around you, and then internalizing that. And not only, for assessing threats, but also for assessing opportunities. That's how I learned to tune into those sensations. Like, oh, it's not only, something that's could be going wrong, it's something that could be going right, or that could go right if I, applied myself in that direction. So I talk about sort of, the next, step or stage in my life of being bullied at school, and how that situational awareness helped me to stay safe from bullies, and also to, learn that I could change my situation, my circumstances, by working and sort of working toward things that I wanted. And then, it served me in business. So if I was in a, giving a pitch, for example, for, trying to pitch a large consumer packaged goods company, I was, sort of, trying to pitch all of these different brands, and started to really hone in on reading the room, reading people's signals, understanding, where I was making a connection versus where I wasn't making a connection based on, people's body language and feedback or questions they were asking me. And so that led me to develop really good relationships with clients for, many years. So that's really, a few examples of how situational awareness has served me both in my personal and professional life.
Hmm. And it sounds like that's part of the whole story that you're telling is the difficult things that brought you to that point where you had such intense
Right.
situational awareness. It
Yeah.
turned into a real benefit for you.
Yeah, it's true that, I did have these experiences that helped get me there, but I think that anyone can develop it, because it's just really a matter of understanding what it is first. And then second, tuning in, just becoming more mindful of, oh, let me pay attention to what am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I smelling? Just again, using those senses to, inform that gut instinct that you might have, sort of, I call it data, like what
Mhm.
kind of data can you take in from your environment that you can then put through that filter, to use your, mind body connection, which I believe is very, very real, very, very strong. Like when you learn how to use it, it's an enormous tool, to use for business success, just using all of your senses and then taking in that data and then like, running it through the, computer that is your mind and then being able to act accordingly.
Mm. Okay, so I've also seen situational awareness, um, people who are maybe particularly sensitive to those things also can take it in as cues that trigger maybe some self-doubt. They can get distracted because of their situational awareness too. Tell me about how you leverage it in a healthy way so that it doesn't trip you up.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, right? Given the fact that, we do sort of have this more distracted society. We're all, and that's one of the reasons why I started my second business, 30seconds.com, is because everything is just, we all have such little time and so many things are pulling on us to try to grab our attention. And so I'm like, okay, if I can deliver, good information in the same amount of time it takes to watch an ad on TV, then maybe, there's a real opportunity here. So that's exactly where that came about. And I think your point is, well taken in that, in sort of this, ADHD society, whatever this is that we're living in, where we're all just, very short attention spans. How do you, use situational awareness? I mean, I think it's really maybe more important than ever before to be able to, sort of get still, if you will, and really understand what is happening around you without those distractions kind of interfering, which I know is very difficult, but I think it's really important. That's another thing that, was one of the lessons in my book, is just this sort of taking time for what I call white space, and to give yourself the gift of white space where you're intentionally unplugging from all of the stressors that are, surround you, at any given time. And, how I do that, I mentioned in multiple ways, but, mindfulness is a huge part of that. Meditation, journaling, taking time for activities, to me, that help me disengage my brain and give my brain a break. So whether that's taking a walk or baking or gardening is a huge one for me. If I'm out there like digging in the soil, I mean, and I can stop thinking about, work or stressors or whatever, all of a sudden, like an idea will pop into my head, or I'll figure out a solution to a problem I've been trying to figure out that I couldn't because I was so stressed out. And all of a sudden I'm, in the garden, I'm like, oh, that's how I do that, So it's just a really important thing to be able to disengage in order to, stay, healthy and productive.
Aren't our brains fascinating? I mean,
Yeah.
just the fact that we can be doing something completely unrelated,
Yeah.
and then our brain is like, thank you. Finally, I can give you this nugget that's going to make a difference for you somehow. I
I
love
know.
it.
I know. And you're like working on it in the background and you don't even realize it,
Yeah.
It's like I'm planting a tulip or
Yeah.
whatever I'm doing. And then it's like, oh, that's how to, get more, whatever, you know what I mean? To the website or whatever, so it is very, very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to read from page 104. And you say, much of what we fear comes from feeling out of control. So when we face our fears, we gain more control over them. It also helps to acknowledge the fear by talking or even writing about it. This
Mhm.
helps you see it for what it is, realize it's there, and that it's okay for it to be there. So it's easy to let fear throw us kind of into that fight or flight, fawn or freeze kind of mode. How do you use you talk about visualization? I'm sure there's other things that you could speak on this about this as well, but how do you use other tactics to move from feeling paralyzed by fear to finding the courage to really move into it?
Yeah. I like that section that you just read because I think fear is one of the things that holds us back the most, right? And it's something that most of us dread. Oh gosh, I'm afraid to do something, so I'm not going to do it, or I don't want to get outside of my comfort zone, or whatever it is. And I feel like what I'm trying to say about fear is that it's actually a good thing. I think of fear as an indicator, just like, we're talking about situational awareness and, being observant and all of those things. Fear is another sort of indicator that helps you assess if you should do something or not. And the way I think about it is when you're afraid, what you should do in order to sort of figure out if you're going to try to push through it or back away from it is weigh the risk versus the reward, first of all, and figure out if what it is that you want matters to you enough that you're willing to, experience that fear and push through it and get to, go after what you want. So if it matters to you more than the fear hinders you, then you'll go and do it. And it's not, I don't want to say it's fear that, feel the fear and do it anyway. That's not exactly what I'm saying, because there are times when you should feel the fear and not do it, so fear is an important thing. It's a tool. So the courage bit, and I talk about fearlessness, and why it's misunderstood. I mean, because I don't know anybody who's truly fearless, meaning without fear. I think, most people feel fear. The people who are fearless are those who have this ability to, weigh the risk versus reward and decide I'm going to go after it, even though I'm afraid, because I want whatever it is to you, more than the fear is going to hinder me. So yeah, the courage is exactly that. It's kind of taking action in the face of fear, after you've weighed the risk versus the reward and decided that you're okay with that risk in this situation. The preparation is also really important, in the writing about it, because that helps you with this assessment of risk versus reward. So writing the pros, writing the cons, however it is that you want to do it, to write about it and to sort of acknowledge it and to experience it and feel it. I think that's important. And I talk about in the book an experience that I had when I was involved in an accelerator program in New York City. And I was really having terrible health challenges at the time. And I was really, debilitated to the point where I was like, you know what, you don't have to do this. You can just quit. You don't have to go to New York. You don't have to do all this stuff. And in the moment, I did exactly what I talked about. I, weighed the risk versus the reward. I, wrote about it. I, analyzed the situation, and then I decided to go with it. And then I prepared the heck out of myself for it in order to be able to do it. So that preparation and, doing everything that I could, from perfecting my pitch to, having the right food to eat, to having the right outfit to wear, like just getting myself, in that exact space that I needed to be in order to fly to New York, step on a stage in front of a lot of people and, present a pitch, that would hopefully help propel my business. That story is one that I hold very closely to because I did it. And I'm so proud of myself for doing it. And I felt like I walked away with a huge success under my belt, and I didn't quit, and all of those things that make me feel so empowered. Instead of feeling like, God, you had this opportunity and you didn't do it. And it would have felt like a failure to me, I think, in that moment. Looking back on it, would I have still done it? I don't know. I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, that was a lot, but like I said, I'm really proud of myself that I did it, and it opened up new opportunities. And so that's probably the best example I can come up with, that really shows how to step into your power, even though you're afraid.
That's exciting to experience it like that, to have that behind you and then know that you can do it as you move forward too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that I think is really important for anyone to understand, is that that was a big example, but even starting with a small example of doing something that causes you, worry or stress or fear, something small, and then accomplishing it. Having done it, now you can do something bigger. Even if you're afraid, you're like, okay, well, I already did that thing and I did it well. So maybe I can do this next, step. Okay. And then get through that, and you did it well. Then all of a sudden, you've taken several steps that, are increasingly bigger and bolder and, leading you toward that greater success that, you're looking for.
So being prepared. I love being prepared. I really like being prepared. I really don't like not being prepared. But you also talk about why people should be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So those of us who really like to prepare so that we feel like we can move into the situation in our comfort zone. But sometimes we're not in it and we don't have that option. So talk to me about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, who wants to be uncomfortable, right? It's just not, it doesn't feel good. You don't want to put yourself out there. It feels really cozy in your comfort zone. And what I've learned is that there's no real great success in your comfort zone, because what you want is kind of on the other side of that. It's it's actually a paradox, right? But you kind of have to put yourself out there. And I just remember being when I was a kid, feeling like I always wanted to blend in, because I always felt like for whatever reason, I just didn't. And you just want to, do what everyone else is doing, you fit in with the others and all this stuff. And so I was out of my comfort zone a lot of the time. And so I tell a story in the book about being the only girl on my baseball team as a child, and how that felt, and pushing through the bullying and the teasing and the taunting and the doubters and the people who underestimated me. And kind of, I had this really great moment on the baseball field that set me up for, again, like we were talking about steps. That was one step on my journey toward, feeling comfortable with being uncomfortable, and being okay with being the only, whether it's the only girl on the baseball team or the only, woman in the boardroom, or whatever you want to, compare it to. But being the only isn't a bad thing. Sometimes when you're the only, it can be a great thing. And sometimes being underestimated can be a great thing, because you come out like kind of like the stealth bomber, and you're like, all of a sudden you're like, boom. And they're like, where did that come from?
Oh my goodness. So true. Okay. But self-confidence, then the self-confidence to actually come out like the bomber. Talk to me about building self-confidence. What is that even? I mean, there's a lot of people that say just be confident, but it seems to me that it's a little more complicated than that. Talk to me about what your thoughts are.
It's all about taking steps. And I feel like, that's a theme in the book is, and I also call it sort of exercising that muscle. You need to exercise your confidence muscle. And how do you do that? Well, it's about taking a little bit of a risk, putting yourself out there a little bit, like we talked about, and then finding success in that first step and saying, okay, that wasn't so bad. I mean, it kind of was hard to get through it, but I did it. And so now I'm going to do something else that involves, me going even further out on a limb. And so every time you do that and you successfully do it, you're building that confidence muscle, and it gets stronger and you get stronger and your self-confidence grows. And soon, hopefully, you're able to say, God, well, if I could do that, I could do that. Or I could, so it's really just a matter of giving yourself opportunities that sometimes feel awful in the moment, or awkward, or, just like, gosh, I really wish I wasn't doing this, but I'm doing it. And then you look back on it and you're like, I did it. I did it. And those 3 words are so empowering. Even today, where I'm at in my life, I'm still putting myself out in spots that I'd rather not be. And when I go through them, it's awful, or sometimes not awful. I'll surprise myself and I'm like, that wasn't so bad, right? But I look back on it and I say those 3 words, I did it. I did it. And I use that with my kids who are now young adults. I'm like, you know what? Push through, do it, whatever. And then, look at yourself and look and say, I freaking did it. I did it, and that's something that, helps you own the challenge, own the opportunity, and then own that self-confidence that you need in order to really get yourself to where you want to be.
Yes. I love that. I love that. I did it. I think that's something that we should all do a little bit more of, is acknowledge what we've done.
Yes.
Be
Give
able to
yourself
say
credit.
it.
Yes.
Yes.
The credit that you deserve. Absolutely.
Because there's something about that also helps build your credibility. So it's like you have this internal credibility, like, yeah, no, I've done it. I can do it. I know that I'm credible.
Yeah.
There's also the external credibility that people need to be able to have influence. Yeah. I'm wondering, how do you see credibility playing into self-confidence and becoming the fire? How do you build credibility in your point of view?
I like the word that you're using, credibility. I think that's really important. In the book, I call it capability, and being capable and proving that you're capable leads to being viable. So I have a whole chapter on the book about, becoming viable. And I think that that's a really misunderstood concept too. Like, what the heck is that? But it's really about you believing in yourself. Okay, I know I have the skills and, what it takes to do it, whatever it is in your life. But that's not enough, because other people have to know that I have the skills and the abilities and I have what it takes to do it. And then when they know that I'm capable, I'll be given more opportunities to show what I can do. And as I show what I can do, then people are like, she becomes viable, a viable employee, a viable, business owner, a viable manager, a viable CEO. That's how you move up that ladder that we were talking about. And when people know that you're capable, they believe that you're viable, you're given more opportunities to lead in greater and greater situations. So yeah, and that's all about credibility. And it's all rolled up into that, and people, believing, oh gosh, well, she did that project really well, so we're going to give her another project, and maybe now this project is bigger, or maybe now she's managing more people, and so more opportunities come your way, and then the more you shine, the more your opportunities grow.
I really like talking about credibility, and like you bringing this new word to me that I haven't used much, viability.
Yeah.
I much prefer that to talking about value and a person's value. We talk about bringing value and that sort of thing. I like the way that you're framing it.
Thank you. It's fun to, it's a different way to look at it. Like, companies are viable, when they're, generating revenue and not operating at a loss and things like that. And just, you're kind of looking at a person like that too, is that this person has a lot of potential, to succeed.
Yeah. And not just they are valuable or not valuable. It's not that. It's it separates it somehow. Yeah. I like that. You talk about becoming your own inspiration.
Yeah.
Tell us how we can become our own inspiration.
This is so important because I think many of us are looking for inspiration. We're looking to be inspired. We're looking for, and sometimes that means looking to others to inspire us or to motivate us or to, fill something in us that we perceive as lacking. And the way that I think about it is that you can't really sit around and wait for inspiration or wait for someone to motivate you. If you want to, empower yourself to succeed, that's not a very empowering thing to sit around and wait. So I talk about becoming your own inspiration because you have to be sort of constantly nourishing and filling yourself, filling your own cup, not waiting for someone to come and fill it for you. With whatever it is that you need in order to feel passionate and driven and motivated to accomplish whatever it is that you want to do. And the way that, I do it in my own life is I find the things that matter to me. Like what is it that lights me up inside? What is it that moves me or makes me feel passionate enough to, jump out of bed in the morning? What makes you light up inside? All of these things. So, and then once I find what that is, the next step is to sort of take action in whatever way that you can, whether it's as simple as writing it down and like, writing your thoughts out about it, or, serving as a volunteer for whatever the mission is, or starting a side hustle. I'm big on side hustles because this is a way to sort of do something about your passion without necessarily, leaving a full-time job, or without, if you're maybe a stay-at-home parent, maybe, you want to stay home with your kids, whatever that is. Side hustles are a really great way to take action without investing too much time, effort, or money into something. So inspiring myself every day is about, filling my cup. So it's about writing, it's about meditating, it's about taking those activities that I talked about before, whether it's a walk or, the gardening time or baking something in the oven. Like that's magic for me. Like those little moments that give my brain a break. And then I just seem to get inspired when I intentionally unplug from the day-to-day stuff that bogs me down. So I take time every single day to, immerse myself in that white space that I need, and that nourishes me and allows me to then inspire others. And I find that when other people are inspired by something I do, they kind of inspire me right back. And it's like this two-way street of inspiration. I call it, inspire and be inspired, because you're kind of, putting something out there, it lights somebody else up, they let you know, and then they have a different idea. They say, oh, I do it this way. And so this is, my team and I do this like daily. Something will happen where, one of my team members will say, oh, I did this today. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to do that. Like I get inspired every day by my team members. And so that's huge for me. And then I inspire them back. And so it's just this, loop, I guess. And at the core of it is just really being, empathetic, if you will, like having empathy for others, having empathy for situations, and sort of putting yourself in other people's shoes. And that, by sort of leading with empathy, I find that gives me, enormous inspiration every day.
Hmm. What is your vision for yourself now? Where you have 30 seconds, you've got Becoming the Fire book. Where are you headed?
Well, it's a lot. So right now it's the cup is running over, which it's a very wonderful place to be. And so I'm trying to find the balance between 30 seconds and Become the Fire and family and home and all of those things that are important, to round out life, like we talked about. And so what's next is probably a lot more of the same. Is really continuing to build 30 seconds, which inspires me every day. That's a really important part of kind of my identity right now. And Become the Fire has sort of been the putting all of, if you get to a certain point in your life where you've achieved some success and you want to be able to pass that on, all the lessons learned and all the hardships, and, don't do it this way, do it that way, just so that you try to save people some headache and heartache. And so that's what the book was about trying to put everything that I know in one place so that hopefully it helps somebody else to, achieve success more quickly. And so hopefully by getting that into the world, I hope that I'm able to mentor some people, and then, we'll see where it goes. But yeah, it feels pretty good right now. I'm going to stick,
Yeah, yeah. Well, congratulations on your book, your
Thank
business.
you.
Where can people, I have one more question for you, but where can people find you, your book, and your business?
Yeah, the easiest place to learn more about the book is at the book website, which is called becomethefire.com. And I have a author website where I, blog and sort of keep up with personal and professional things. That's elisaschmitz.com. And then of course, 30seconds.com is where we're playing every day on that website. So please feel free to drop in anywhere on any of those three sites.
Well, Elisa, what is the one thing that you want to leave us with? This is the Voice of Influence podcast, and people who are seeking healthy influence to make a difference with who they are and what they bring to the world. What is one last thing that you would want to share, or piece of advice that you'd want to share with the person who wants to have a voice of influence?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. All I guess I can speak to is my own experience and how I feel like I've developed this voice over the years is by having a mission that is from the heart, that I care deeply and passionately about, that I then share from the heart, this passion with others. And by doing that, I've been able to be very fortunate to grow two businesses that helped a lot of people, that made a difference in people's lives. And I think that when you're truly passionate about something and you want to, make life better, which is another one of my mantras, make life better. Does this make life better? Okay, then let's do it. That's kind of one of the questions I ask myself. And I think when you kind of go out there in the world with that goal to make life better and to help other people and to make a difference, that's contagious, and it spreads like wildfire. And I'm grateful that I've been able to do that. And so I guess I would encourage those who want to build their own voice of influence to ask themselves, what is it that really lights them up inside? What is it that they can really believe in and be passionate about and make a mission out of? And I think when you are mission driven, people feel that, people want to get behind you and listen to you, and that's how you develop the voice. And writing or speaking, whenever you can find those opportunities to then share what it is that you're passionate about, what and your thoughts, and those are big deals. And if you feel like you're not quite at the level of, maybe you need more knowledge in order to get that sort of credibility or capability that you and I talked about earlier, if you need that in order to bolster your presence, then find ways to do that, whether that's through a class or whether that's through a mentor, whether you can sort of plug into a network or a group that is like-minded. I think intentionally working on ways to sort of build your presentation or your ability to deliver your message is really important. So then when you combine your passion with your skills, this is what we were talking about. This is how you become capable and become more viable as a leader. So I guess that was a long-winded answer, but passion and purpose put together, it makes magic.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your heart with us today. I love how grounded you are in that, your humanity, and how you bring that to the conversation and to the world. So thank you for being a voice of influence today for our listeners, Lisa.
Thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure.